Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Little Acts of Kindness. This will be Part 13, Chapter 13, entitled McDonald's. He woke up in agony. His head hurt, and he wanted to claw his eyes out, and they felt like acid in his skull. Isuku made the stupid decision of trying to open his eyes, and then had to slam them shut again as a pure, blinding white greeted him. He couldn't see anything, and his head hurt, like someone was taking a bat to his head and whacking him repeatedly. Izuku cried, curling up in pain. He couldn't do anything, couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't see. He laid on his bed and couldn't do anything but hope the pain would go away soon. "So, you need our help, Eraser?" Miss Joke asked, looking surprised that he had actually called on her and Rocklock. "Yes, as you can see I got injured, but I need someone to pick up the investigation I was doing." "All right, what is it?" "Aldair Junior High. I've already determined that they have an extreme case of quirk discrimination that they let go on, and purposely letting the teacher sabotage students, but I also have reason to believe one of the teachers is a pedophile. I don't have any proof, and was planning on tailing the man to see if I could learn anything when I got injured." "So you want us to tail the man and dig up the school's dirty secrets?" Rocklock stated. "Yes, at least until I am healed up." "We owe you. Just leave it to us. Maybe afterwards we can go on a date," Miss Joke said, grinning at him. Shota sighed and shook his head. Hisashi had Nomuri pursuing him, and he had Miss Joke. "No," he answered flatly, and she laughed. "I'll get you to agree one day." "No, you won't." She waved dismissively, leaving the room, leaving him with Rocklock. "Why don't you just tell her you have someone else already?" Shota looked at Rocklock, raising an eyebrow. The man shook his head. "I'm married, dude. I can see that look in your eyes. You have someone you care about, though I don't know who." He just nodded. "I do have a partner I'm happily married to," he said, giving a confirmation to Rocklock. "I understand if you're trying to keep them safe by not telling others about it, but make sure they are fine with that. You don't want them feeling like you're trying to hide the relationship. Me and my wife nearly got a divorce because of that." Shota paused, pursing his lips behind the bandages. Did Hisashi feel like that? He had brought up that they keep their relationship private, and Hisashi didn't protest it, saying it was fine, but what if his husband was upset by it? "Thank you," Shota stated, giving a nod to his fellow underground hero. The man nodded, leaving the room, and Shota stayed behind another couple minutes before leaving, going to the parking lot where Hisashi was waiting in the car for him. His husband spotted him and came out of the car. "Sho! How did your meeting go? Did they agree to help?" Hisashi opened the door, letting him in, and going around to the driver's side. "Yes." Shota trailed off. "Is something wrong, Sho?" Hisashi asked, pausing and starting the car. "No, not really. Just Lockrock brought up something." "Oh?" "He told me that he understood, wanting to keep a relationship secret to protect someone. I guess he assumed you were a civilian or something, but he mentioned that he did the same thing with his wife and they nearly got a divorce because of it. I guess I never really asked you if you wanted us to go public with our relationship." Hisashi stared at him with wide eyes. His gaze softened, and his husband lifted a hand cupping his face. "Sho, I don't need the world to know about our relationship. So long as I have you by my side, then I'm happy. If you want to keep it between us and a few others, that's fine. If you want to tell others, that's fine as well. I just want you to stay by my side." Once again, Shota was glad for the bandages, as he felt his face warming up. How did Hisashi always know the right things to say to make his heart miss a beat? His husband turned back to the wheel and started the car up, driving them towards their small home they lived in. "Want me to put on Sherlock while I cook dinner?" "Sure," Shota agreed. Frankly, he hated how his arms were useless. It stopped him from doing anything actually productive. But Hisashi had found this show from before the quirk era that was pretty interesting. After an hour, his husband came in and sat down next to him, holding a large plate and a pair of chopsticks, and the man started to feed them, switching between the two of them. It was frustrating that he needed Hisashi to feed him, but the way Hisashi's eyes sparkled made it worth bearing. They finished eating, and Hisashi helped him change clothes, working the shirt off around his cast carefully before re-slinging them. After changing into some comfortable sweatpants, the two headed off to bed, Hisashi curling around him, nuzzling his neck a bit. "I love you, Shota." He smiled. "I love you too, Hisashi." Izuku woke up once more to his stomach rumbling angrily. He kept his eyes closed, awaiting the pain, but besides for a slight sort of pressure, there was no pain. Cautiously, he opened his eyes up. He could see again. Izuku looked around, blinking a bit as his vision seemed almost sharper than it was previously. Frowning, he glanced at his phone, noticing that it was Sunday. He had spent all of Saturday curled up on his bed in pain and blinded. He had passed out at one point, it was so bad. Izuku sat up, rubbing at his eyes, and frowned when his hand came away with a ton of crust. Not the normal sleep crust, but more. He looked at his hand and saw that the crust was whitish. Looking at a mirror, he saw that there was a bunch of that strange white crust around his eyes, and trailing down his face towards his ear that had been on his pillow. Looking at the pillow, he noticed that there was more of the strange white stuff on it. Going to the bathroom, he washed his face, removing that strange white crust. He grabbed his pillow and took off the pillowcase, tossing it onto his laundry basket to wash later. But first, he needed to get some food. He was starving. Plus, he didn't know if his mom had eaten anything. If it was a good day, she probably got herself something to eat. If it was a bad day, then she probably didn't. He went into the kitchen, fumbling a bit with the crutches, finding his mom sitting staring at the turned-off TV blankly. Next to her was an empty bowl of leftovers that was starting to smell. He grabbed it and put it into the kitchen sink, then started to make a meal. He served her, apologizing for not cooking food yesterday. She claimed it was fine, saying that he should be more careful not to get hurt. She didn't really understand that he just had a horrible headache, but that was fine. His eyes felt a bit dry, but it wasn't that bad. Still, he felt worn out. After he finished, he returned to his room, shifting his second pillow to be more in the center. Izuku wasn't sure why he was so tired. Maybe tomorrow he should visit Recovery Girl if he wasn't feeling better. He collapsed onto the bed and fell asleep, exhaustion claiming him despite not having been up for long. He woke up to a knocking. He blinked, frowning in confusion. A knock came again. "Midoriya!" Mike's voice called out. He stumbled out of his bed, grabbing the crutches and hobbling to the door, opening it just as Mike opened his mouth. "Whoa!" the man said, worry shining in his eyes. "I slept in, by accident," Izuku said. "I'm more concerned that you look like Sho when he hasn't gotten any sleep for a week. What happened?" I don't know. I woke up Saturday with an even worse headache than Friday. I couldn't even get out of bed. I passed out from the pain. I woke up briefly yesterday and made some food, and then went back to sleep, exhausted," Izuku answered, rubbing at his eye and trying to relieve that strange pressure he felt. It wasn't painful, just unfamiliar. "Are you okay now? Do you want to take a sick day?" I'm fine. Just my phone probably died. I'm sorry." "It's no problem. Go ahead and get ready. I'll tell Shota what happened and wait for you. Sound good?" He bit his lip as he nodded, but he added, "It'll be a few minutes. If you want to wait inside, you can." Mike's smile almost seemed to brighten the apartment up. "Thanks, little listener. I'll see you in a few." Izuku turned, heading back into his room, and wrinkled his nose. Because of his tiredness, he didn't do laundry over the weekend, like he normally did. He grabbed the container and moved it out into the hallway as a reminder for later. He hopped into the shower, quickly rinsing himself off and rushing out, barely taking a couple of minutes. Izuku dried up and put on his clothes. He grabbed his backpack and frowned. He didn't really have time to grab gifts for the teachers. He would just have to suffer a week of low grades. He exited his room and saw Mike was standing in the hall, looking at the basket with a frown. Izuku followed his gaze towards the white crust. I don't know what that stuff is. I woke up with it all over my eyes and on my pillow." "Huh. How odd. Do you mind if I grab a sample, to see if we can figure out what it is? It may be nothing, but you were hurting all weekend, and that white stuff could be some sort of side effect." It's fine," Izuku said, watching as Mike reached into a pocket, pulling out a small kit. It was about the size of a larger smartphone and an inch thick. "Portable, miniature kit, just to have something on hand when I'm not in my hero outfit. Never know when you'll come across a crime scene and need to safely collect evidence," Mike said, smiling as he saw the confused look Izuku was making. He saw how the man grabbed a small petri dish and a brush, swiping the loose stuff into the dish and then closing the lid on it. The man slid the kit back into his pocket. "All right, I'm ready to go now, are you?" Izuku nodded. Mike looked at his tie, which he hadn't even tied yet, just threw it around his neck. "Do you mind if I fix your tie?" the teacher asked, gesturing to it. Izuku hesitated, but then nodded. Hisashi smiled and stepped forward, carefully taking the tie and fixing it. Is that too tight? No, it's fine. Mike nodded and stepped back, a warm look in his eyes that reminded him a bit of how Aizawa looked. Then the two of them were leaving the apartment. He followed after the teacher, walking down the stairs carefully. He got into the car and smiled at Aizawa, who was looking over him with worry. Zashi told me what you said. Do you want to go to Recovery Girl during homeroom? No, I'm fine, Izuku responded, finding it easier to talk to Aizawa. President Mike started driving, and part of the way there he stopped at McDonald's, going through the drive-thru. What would you like, little listener, since you missed breakfast? You don't have to, Isuku protested, waving his arms a bit as he flushed, embarrassed. But I want to. Feel free to have anything you want. Besides, we're going to arrive late, might as well have some food, Mike said with a small laugh. The egg McMuffin, and a chocolate shake, please, Izuku hesitantly requested. Aizawa huffed. If they ask why we're late, you can just claim traffic, Midoriya, if you don't want to tell them the truth. They finally pulled up, and President Mike ordered 2 egg McMuffins, Izuku's chocolate shake, 2 coffees, plus a breakfast burrito. Soon they were pulling up and receiving their food, and Mike drove them to the school, eating the food along the way. Aizawa a bit comically as he pinched the egg McMuffin between his 2 casts. Mike, of course, teased him about it, earning a glare from the bandages. Oh, is my mummy of a husband annoyed at me? Your glare isn't as effective when you're all wrapped up like that. I'll have you know, my students find it just as terrifying, Aizawa retorted. I don't know about that. Let's ask Midoriya what he thinks. Ashido still squeaks the same, Izuku answered. Aizawa huffed. She needs to learn to be more discreet if she's going to talk in class. They pulled up into the school and got out, Mike huffing that he was going to be even later, as he would have to change into his hero outfit. Just go in your civilian wear. It's not like the kids wouldn't recognize you in a heartbeat if they ever saw you on the street. He could pretend to be a sub that just looks like a twin of himself, Izuku hesitantly suggested, as the idea popped into his mind. Mike laughed. That's hilarious, little listener. I think I'll do that. See if I can go the whole day with people thinking I'm not actually myself. Aizawa snorted. If you're going to do that, you will need to act differently. That's easy. I'll just act like you, Sho, Mike answered. They split paths, and Aizawa and Izuku entered the classroom, and the students fell silent. You arrived late, Midoriya, Ida said to him as he entered. Traffic was bad, Aizawa grunted out, stepping into the room behind him, and going to the podium. Several of the students nodded at that, accepting the excuse. Izuku sat down, and it was time for a school day to begin. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 13 of Little Acts of Kindness. Chapter 14 will be up next. Eager to hear your thoughts and reactions to everything so far, and as always, thank you so much for listening.